It began like a whisper, a quiet Tuesday morning in Ouagadougou. No flashing lights, no motorcades. Just President Ibrahim Traoré, alone in his modest office, sleeves rolled up, poring over a report about displaced schoolchildren. The kind of work no one applauds. Then buzz. His phone lit up. A message from his assistant. Invitation, Africate charity concert. Lagos. Friday night. Big event. High profile. Celebrities. He blinked. A celebrity concert? For a moment, the president just stared at the screen, brow furrowed. That wasn't his scene. Flashbulbs and egos. No thanks. But then again, the cause was close to his heart, raising funds for West African refugees. He leaned back in his chair. A pause, then a nod. Tell them I'll attend. Quietly. Thursday evening. No motorcade. No sirens. No presidential jet. Just a man in a plain gray suit, boarding a commercial flight like everyone else. No reporters, no red carpet. Just Ibrahim Traoré, middle seat, economy class, quietly sipping water while the woman next to him asked if he worked in finance. The moment he landed in Lagos, it was clear nobody knew he was coming. But backstage at the glittering Africate concert, the organizers? Oh, they knew. Their jaws practically hit the floor. The president said yes? That president. Meanwhile, not everyone backstage was thrilled. Especially not Thomas, the Afrobeat king, social media deity, and living embodiment of swagger. Thomas snorted, twirling a diamond ring on his pinky. The president of where again? Burkina something? Man's just trying to trend. He shot a look at his manager, smirking. Let's give His Excellency something to remember. What do you mean? I mean a little roast. Just for laughs. A low chuckle. Then, game on. Friday night. Lagos. A tidal wave of light and sound. 30,000 people. Neon lights. Glitter. Heat. Drums like thunder. Cameras flashing like lightning bolts. The stars paraded on stage in a blur of glamour. The energy? Electric. The crowd? Loud enough to rattle the heavens. And seated quietly in the front row? A solitary figure. Modest. Composed. Almost invisible. President Ibrahim Traoré. No fanfare. No entourage. Just a couple plainclothes guards and a quiet presence that didn't need to shout. Some in the crowd whispered, "Wait, is that him? Why's he sitting there like that? No VIP section?" But the man just smiled, clapped politely, and kept his gaze fixed on the performers. Then the music stopped, and he stepped out. Thomas. The stage lights exploded. The beat dropped, and the crowd lost their minds. He prowled across the stage, microphone gripped like a scepter, sunglasses gleaming, sweat glistening on his forehead like war paint. After 3 hits back-to-back, he paused. Dramatically. Too dramatically. He wiped his brow, turned to the crowd, and flashed that smirking million-dollar grin. "We got a special guest in the house tonight." Cheers. Screams. Phones held high. "Give it up for the president of..." He squinted, theatrically confused. "Wait, what's the country again?" "Beat. Burkina. Burrito." The crowd howled. Applause. Gasps. Laughter. Thomas bowed like he'd just won an Oscar. Traoré didn't blink. He just sat there, lips pressed, eyes steady, unmoved. "No offense, Your Excellency," Thomas continued, pacing smugly. "You're doing great. I mean, hey, real presidents don't fly economy, right?" Louder laughter. A few murmurs. Some in the audience looked uneasy. Then, he stood. Ibrahim Traoré rose to his feet. Calm. Measured. No drama. The crowd fell quiet, like someone had pulled the plug on the night. Even Thomas froze. Wait, was the president walking toward the stage? Whispers rippled like wildfire. Is he mad? What's he doing? Oh no. An event coordinator darted forward, panic in his eyes. "Mr. President, please, you don't have to." But Traoré gently touched the man's shoulder. "It's all right," he said, like a father reassuring a nervous child. Up the stairs he walked. No rush, no anger. Just purpose. Thomas stepped back, suddenly unsure of his stage. The mic trembled in his grip. The president reached out, and Thomas handed him the mic slowly, warily. Now, there was no music. No lights dancing. Just a man with a microphone, and a silence so thick you could feel it pressing against your skin. Then, he spoke. His voice was steady, low, but every syllable struck like a drumbeat in a cathedral. "I didn't come here for applause, or to be treated like I'm more than you. I came here because across this continent, children are starving. Families are fleeing war. And this stage, this music, it can heal. His eyes swept the audience. A sea of stillness. But only if we use it to lift each other, not tear each other down. No one clapped. No one cheered. Not yet. They just watched, stunned. And somewhere in the back of the crowd, a single voice whispered, "Damn." The stadium was silent. Not quiet, not hushed, but breathless. As if the entire crowd had forgotten how to exhale. Spotlights softened. The glow from 1,000 phone screens lit up faces frozen in awe. Some wiped at their eyes, startled by their own tears. And still, Traoré hadn't even begun his story. He raised the mic again, slowly, like it carried weight. "I want to tell you about someone," he said. "A boy I met. Just 3 days ago. No music. No movement. Just words, and silence clinging to them. I was at a refugee camp, near the Burkina Mali border. It's the kind of place no one photographs. The kind of place you smell before you see. There, sitting in the dirt with a stick in his hand, I met Anthony." He paused. Let the name hang in the air. He couldn't have been more than 10. Barefoot. Skin like dust. But he held that stick like it was Excalibur. On the screen behind him, a photo appeared. A child in tattered clothes, chin up, defiant, unbroken. Gasps echoed. One woman near the front covered her mouth. "He told me he wanted to be a doctor." Traoré continued. "Said, I want to fix people. You know, like how they fix bikes." Laughter fluttered through the crowd, soft, stunned, and wet with tears. He's never seen a classroom. Hasn't eaten a real meal in weeks. He's never held a stethoscope. But when I asked him what keeps him going, he looked at me, straight into me, and said, "Because someone out there must care." That sentence, it landed like thunder. You could feel the air shift. Shoulders stiffened. Heads bowed. Hearts cracked open. That's why I came here. Not for applause. Not for headlines. I came because somewhere in the dust, there's a boy with no shoes who still believes the world has room for hope. And if he can believe that, barefoot and alone, then what excuse do the rest of us have? A long, trembling silence followed. The audience didn't cheer. Not yet. They were still processing. Even the most jaded celebrities sat stunned. And Thomas? He stood at the far edge of the stage, sunglasses off, hands twitching at his sides. The room wasn't looking at him with amusement anymore. They were looking at him like a man who just learned gravity was real. Traoré turned his head slightly, locking eyes with him. Not with anger, but with something worse, compassion. "You have power," he said. "People sing your words in the streets. They play your voice at weddings, in taxis, in nightclubs. So I ask you, why not sing something that helps someone stand a little taller?" The message didn't stab, it healed. And that made it cut even deeper. Thomas tried to speak. Nothing came. His shoulders dropped. He turned. And without a word, he walked off stage. No exit music. No cheering entourage. Just silence following him like a shadow. Traoré placed the mic gently into the hands of a stagehand and stepped away. He made it 3 steps before the first person stood. Then another. And another. Soon, the whole stadium rose like a wave of thunder. Traoré. 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 It wasn't fandom. It was something older. Something sacred. Gratitude. Reverence. A need to believe again. Phones recorded. Live streams exploded. The internet ignited like dry grass in firelight. But Traoré didn't soak it in. He didn't wave or flash a smile. He simply lowered his head and walked quietly off stage. This wasn't a victory lap. This was a beginning. Later that night, behind the scenes, organizers offered him a gleaming SUV, air-conditioned and armored. "No need," he said. "I'll ride with the doctors." He climbed into the back of an old white van. No seatbelt. No AC. Just 2 young volunteers and the dust of Legos curling through the cracked windows. They didn't talk about the concert. They talked about patience. About trauma. About healing wounds that bandages couldn't touch. Meanwhile, the digital world caught fire. Clips of his speech were everywhere. Trending in 40 countries. Hashtags dominated every feed. Hashtag #TraorTruth. Hashtag Anthony. Hashtag Africa Speaks. Thomas deleted his promo posts. Hours later, he posted a single sentence. "I was wrong. I've never felt so small. Please forgive me." Reaction videos flooded in. Influencers wept into their ring lights. Activists reposted the speech with captions like, "Real leadership looks like this." But Traoré didn't notice. He was already gone, deep into the interior where there were no followers, no filters, no signal. Saturday, he arrived at a small border hospital with peeling paint and 3 working beds. It smelled of iron and sweat. The nurses were exhausted, but they smiled when they saw him. He greeted each one by name. In a dim corner, a little girl lay motionless under a torn mosquito net. Her chest rose and fell like a dying breeze. Donald, 5 years old. Malaria. A nurse whispered, "She needs 4 fluids." The truck stuck in the mud. 30 kilometers away. Traoré said nothing. He rolled up his sleeves. He grabbed a shovel. And he dug. Not for press. Not for praise. Just because it had to be done. 4 hours later, the truck arrived. The 4 bags were hooked up. Donald's breathing slowed, then steadied. None of it was on the news. Except, a teenage boy nearby had filmed it. He uploaded it with a caption that made the world pause. "Our president digs for children. What does yours do?" It didn't just go viral. It roared. Like a spark dropped into dry grass, the story ignited faster than anyone could contain it. Not just on phones or news feeds, but in coffee shops, government buildings, refugee camps, and across kitchen tables lit by candlelight. From Paris to Nairobi to Rio, the question echoed. Who is this man? Presidents whispered it in closed-door meetings. Activists chanted it in the streets. Influencers posted his face between brands and filters, but even their followers could tell this wasn't just another trend. And yet, Ibrahim Traoré still hadn't looked at his phone. He was in a worn-down hospital room, sitting cross-legged on a mat beside a sleeping girl with malaria. Donald's tiny fingers gripped his thumb like a lifeline. He was humming softly, not a national anthem, not a speech, just an old lullaby his mother once sang while grinding millet at dusk. He didn't need headlines. He needed her to live. That night, in Ouagadougou, the presidential hotline blinked red. A call. From the United Nations. We'd like to nominate President Ibrahim Traoré for the Global Humanitarian Peace Award. There was a pause on the other end. His assistant cleared his throat awkwardly. He's not in the palace right now. Then where is he? She checked the GPS. A single dot pulsed, barely visible, tucked deep in the jungle, far from reception. He's building a classroom. While TV anchors dissected his humility and analysts debated if he was too genuine to survive politics, Traoré was knee-deep in clay, stacking bricks in a village few maps even named Karuma. The old schoolhouse had been torn apart by monsoon winds. Its roof now lay somewhere downstream. And yet, there he was, sleeves rolled, hands blistered, mixing mud with local masons and laughing with children who weren't sure if he was real. A boy approached, skeptical. "Are you the real president?" Traoré held up his palms. Raw, bleeding slightly. Would a fake president have hands like these? The boy's eyes lit up, and he ran to tell the others. He's one of us. Then the skies broke open. Rain. Unforgiving. Blinding. The kind that turns roads into rivers and hope into memory. But no one moved. Not the masons. Not the mothers. Not Traoré. He stayed, soaked to the skin, anchoring the final doorframe with a carpenter beside him, their shoulders bumping as they fought wind and water together. No bodyguards. No podium. Just mud, rain, and something stronger than both, will. When the job was done, villagers begged him to rest. A teacher brought porridge. A child offered a dry scarf. But it was an elderly woman, thin, trembling, eyes like worn paper, who finally reached him. She tugged gently at his arm. "You remind me of my son," she whispered. "He died in a militia raid. He never stopped helping others either." She wrapped her shawl around his soaked shoulders. He nodded. She cried silently. So did her granddaughter. By dawn, the clouds had broken. Sunlight filtered through the mist like gold dust. And the school? It stood. A little crooked. Still wet. But alive. Solid. Waiting. Children danced barefoot in the puddles. Teachers kissed their own palms in disbelief. Traoré hoisted the chalkboard into place himself. On the back wall, someone had painted in bright blue letters. "Built together with our president." Above it, a drone sent by a Pan-African channel hovered quietly. The footage was live within minutes. And suddenly the question changed. The world no longer asked who Ibrahim Traoré was. Now they were asking, why aren't more leaders like him? In Lagos, Thomas stared out his penthouse window. The TV played his own concert on repeat, but he couldn't bear to look. He'd seen the videos, all of them. The speech, the digging, the school and the flood. And something inside him kept cracking. He whispered to his reflection, "I laughed at this man. And he's out there building schools with his bare hands. He shut off the screen, packed a single bag. No stylist, no crew, just a notebook and silence. He boarded the first plane to Burkina Faso. There was no press waiting when he landed. No fans, no cameras, just the heat and the dust and the feeling of being very small in a very big country. He walked the streets anonymously, asking strangers, street vendors, drivers. At last, a market woman pointed with a mango-stained finger. "Try Sapan. They say he's with the widows there." He boarded a crowded bus, sat beside a farmer with a sack of yams, wrote in his notebook while the wheels rolled over cracked earth. "I've spent years filling stadiums with sound. This man fills broken homes with dignity." By the time Thomas reached Sapan, the sun was already melting into the horizon. And there, under a crooked tree that had seen too much, sat President Traoré. No suit, no flag. He was crouched beside an old water pump, grease on his arms, helping a widow fix the only source of clean water for 5 miles. Around him sat women with weathered hands and eyes that had forgotten how to shine, but were slowly learning again. Thomas stood frozen. His chest felt like it was caving in. One of the widows, Mama Donna, was humming the same tune Traoré had sung to Donald. She looked up at Thomas as he stepped forward. Her voice didn't shake. "I lost my husband protecting our crops. They shot him while I was stirring the pot for dinner." She placed a gnarled hand on Traoré's arm. No one came after. No one even asked. But this man sat beside me and said, "Tell me everything." He listened. He cared. That is what I will carry to my grave. Thomas dropped to his knees in the dirt. "Mr. President, I came to say I'm sorry. I used your name for laughter. I didn't know your soul." Traoré didn't respond immediately. He looked around. At the women, the dry land, the rusty pump, then back at Thomas. "Then don't listen to me," he said softly. "Listen to them." That night, as the stars spilled across the ink-black sky, the widows began to sing. Songs of sons who didn't come home, of fields burned, of wells gone dry, but also of love, of survival, of breath held through the darkest nights. And Thomas, the man with a platinum voice, sat silently in the dust. No melody, no performance, no mask, just a man with his hands in his lap and tears rolling down his face. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't the one making the music. He was finally hearing it. The night in Sapan didn't fall, it descended, slow and solemn, like the exhale of a village that hadn't breathed in years. Smoke curled from a small fire in the center of the square, glowing softly under 1,000 silent stars. Traoré stood beside it, not as a symbol, not as a figurehead, but as a man. His hands were cracked from wrenching iron and splintered from hauling wood. His shoulders sagged beneath the weight of the day. His eyes had seen too much. And still, he stayed. Thomas sat nearby, legs folded, posture uncertain, not out of fatigue, but from a quiet, growing humility. The crowd around them wasn't a crowd at all, just people. Villagers. Women with lined faces, boys with bare feet, elders who spoke more with their eyes than their words. Someone poured tea. Someone cried. No one tried to lead the moment. It simply existed. Then a boy with dust on his cheeks crept through the circle and tapped Thomas's arm. "Will you sing?" Thomas blinked. The request hit like a question no one had asked in years. His lips parted, but no sound came. Before he could refuse, Traoré placed a hand gently on his shoulder. There was no pressure in it. No stage. No audience. Only an invitation. And Thomas stood. He did not sing like the man who once filled stadiums. He sang like the child he used to be, the one who listened through cracked doors to his grandmother's voice. The lullaby floated from his throat like something fragile and nearly forgotten. The melody wavered, caught, and stumbled, but never fell. People closed their eyes. Some wept. No one applauded. When the last note dissolved into the smoke, the silence that followed didn't ask for more. It was enough. Traoré stepped forward, his voice barely louder than the wind. "Tomorrow," he said, "we dig a well. No more aching backs carrying water across miles. No more children drinking from rivers that bury their own dead." There was no cheering. Not at first. Just stillness. Then a wave of relief. Then gratitude. Then hope. And then Thomas spoke. "Let me build it," he said, almost afraid of his own words. "Let me give it. All of it." Gasps fluttered. Someone dropped a cup. But Traoré didn't smile for the money. He smiled for the turning, the shift inside the man who used to sing about riches, now offering them with bare hands. That night, the two men sat beside the dying fire, not speaking. just watching it burn down, like old selves disappearing into ash. By dawn, rumors of what had happened in Sapan had already reached other villages. Not as breaking news, but as myths in motion. People began to line the roads, not to wave flags, but to watch, to witness, to understand. In Zunua, a village where the air clung to the skin like sorrow, a girl named Amanda stood in front of what remained of her school, which is to say, nothing. She wore a torn uniform that had survived more storms than most buildings. Clutched in her hands was a small notebook, nearly empty, its paper brittle as bark. Traoré spotted her. He didn't ask a guard to fetch her. He went himself. "Why aren't you in class?" he asked, crouching low. She didn't lift her gaze. "Our roof collapsed last year. We just wait for the sky to clear." He gently took her notebook. On the last page, she had drawn a building neat, with windows and a flag. Smiling children stood inside it, facing forward. "This is my school," she said. "The one in my head." Thomas, standing behind them, felt something inside his chest unravel. That afternoon, without speeches or shovels with gold handles, bricks began to move. Villagers gathered. They didn't wait to be asked. By sunset, the foundation of Amanda's dream had begun, built by hands that had lost so much and found again the power to create. As the last light slipped behind the hills, Amanda turned to Traoré. "Will you be here when it's finished?" He smiled. "No, I'll be here before it's finished. I'll sit beside you, and we'll call the roll together." That night, by firelight once more, Thomas noticed something. A pale scar, winding across Traoré's wrist, faded, but unmistakable. Around the body had survived, but the heart had not forgotten. "What happened?" Thomas asked softly. Traoré didn't answer right away. His eyes were fixed on the flames. "I was 10. My village was attacked. My brother pushed me into a bin of millet and told me to keep quiet. Then he ran out to lead the fighters away." A long silence. "They never found him. But I remember the sound of his voice. I remember thinking, if I live, I'll live for something." Thomas looked down at his own hands. They'd once held microphones like weapons. Now, they trembled just from holding truth. "Everything I've done has been for applause," he whispered. "But you've walked through fire and still carry others on your back." Traoré didn't respond. He fed another stick into the fire and said simply, "We don't choose our wounds, but we can choose what grows from them." The children had fallen asleep around the circle. Bowls empty. Bellies not quite full. Quietly, Traoré rose. No orders. No attention. He began handing out warm food from a pot he had asked to be made earlier. One scoop. One hand. One child at a time. No one noticed at first. Then everyone did. No one spoke. They simply watched, a man giving as if he'd been born to it. Just before morning, a soldier arrived with a sealed envelope. The handwriting was uneven. Gentle. It was from his mother. Traoré opened it carefully, as if afraid it might vanish. "My son. They call you many things now. I knew only one name, kind. When your father died, I feared you'd be swallowed by anger. But instead, you planted gentleness. That is what your brother died for. That is what I live to see. Please rest when you can. And eat. You forget to eat. Love, always a Mama." Traoré pressed the letter to his chest and closed his eyes. He didn't speak. Not because he couldn't. Because silence was the only honest answer. Thomas, sitting beside him, asked the question as softly as it had ever been asked. "Do you miss home?" Traoré opened his eyes, the letter still held tightly in his hand. "I never left it," he said. "I carry it with me, in every village, every hand I shake, every girl who draws a school on paper." And then it came. Quiet at first. A hum. From one of the widows, her voice weathered, but unbroken. Then another. Then another. It wasn't a song of power or protest. It was a lullaby. The same one his mother used to sing under the thatched roof of a house long gone. And as the melody rose, curling like smoke into the pre-dawn sky, Traoré closed his eyes. He was no longer a president. Not a hero. Not a symbol. He was simply a son. A survivor. A keeper of memory. A builder of what had been lost. And all the phones capturing the moment didn't just record a man. They recorded a soul, lit from within, singing without ever opening his mouth. By midweek, the motorcade curved back into Ouagadougou, not with fanfare, but with the stillness of something sacred returning home. The roads were lined with faces, not waving flags or chanting slogans, just watching. Like pilgrims greeting a memory they hadn't known they missed. The capital had been waiting, not for spectacle, but for silence to speak again. The concert that once mocked him had been reborn. Now called Voices of Change, it wasn't about celebrities anymore. It wasn't even really about music. It was about presence. The stadium flooded with people, but the air wasn't electric. It was reverent. Phones hovered like prayer candles. No one screamed. No one shoved. They were all waiting for the one man who never asked to be watched. Backstage, Thomas paced in a simple shirt. The once unstoppable showman now looked like a boy backstage at a school play. When Traoré entered, no entourage, no medals, Thomas rose and bowed his head. "I failed," he said. "I mistook volume for power." Traoré placed a hand on his shoulder, warm, steady. "You handed me a microphone," he said, "and I gave it back to the people." Then, without another word, he walked toward the light. He stepped onto the stage. Alone. No music. No anthem. Just the quiet that fell when thousands remembered how to listen. The wind shifted. And then he spoke. "Don't cheer for me." A beat. No sound. Just the soft hum of breath being held. Cheer for the boy who studies under a broken roof and still believes in tomorrow. For the mother who sings to a grave but still plants flowers. For the girl who draws a school on paper and dares to call it home. He paused. And then his voice broke. "My brother died to give me life. So now, I live to give others hope." The entire stadium leaned inward, as if the man on stage wasn't just speaking to them, but for them. He named them, one by one. Farmers in Zunua, widows in Sapan, orphans in Karuma, soldiers in the north, children who had never seen a chalkboard, teachers who hadn't been paid in years. He didn't generalize. He remembered. And then, as the silence deepened into something holy, he gave them the line that no one would forget. "I am not your hero. I am your echo. I am the sound your silence has been waiting to become." The crowd didn't erupt. It folded inward, into tears, into stillness, into the realization that they had never needed a king. They needed someone who heard them. The clip went online within moments. But it wasn't the words that broke the internet. It was what happened between the words. His voice cracking. The tears he didn't hide. The way he paused to breathe when speaking about the forgotten. The way the crowd wept with him, not for him. Children across the continent reenacted his speech in schoolyards. Artists painted his face onto walls, not with crowns, but with roots. And Thomas? He posted a single caption. "I thought I was the voice. Turns out, I was the noise." He's the silence that made us listen. That night, thunder rolled across the sky. Rain fell like a cleansing him. Still, the people didn't leave. Outside the palace gates, they stood soaked to the bone. No chants. No slogans. Just presence. And then he emerged. No golden robe. No official banner. Just a wool blanket over his shoulders and a girl holding his hand. Amanda. The one who drew her dream school on a torn page. She stepped forward, her small fingers gripping a microphone twice her size. "He said he'd sit with me when school started. But he did more than that. He reminded us that we matter." A hush, then a single clap, then a wave of them, not applause, but gratitude made visible. And through the tears and the rain, Traoré leaned into the mic one last time. "As long as I live," he whispered, "your dreams will not drown in silence."